There comes a moment in every life when silence speaks louder than words, when distance becomes more powerful than closeness, and when becoming unreachable is not about abandonment, but about transformation. To withdraw, to pull away, is often misunderstood as rejection, yet in truth it is one of the most profound movements of the soul. To become unreachable is not to disappear from life, but to appear more fully to yourself. Let us walk through what really happens when you take that step back, when you no longer respond to every call, every demand, every weight of expectation. It is not escape, it is awakening, and here are the deeper truths of what unfolds in that sacred space. When you become unreachable, something very deep is set in motion, not only within yourself, but also within those around you. At first glance, people may misinterpret your silence, your absence, or your refusal to answer every call for help as indifference or coldness. Yet beneath that surface lies a profound truth. Your withdrawal invites others to awaken their own strength. For much of life, many of us take on the role of being the constant anchor for those we love. We are always available, always answering, always carrying burdens that are not our own. It feels noble, it feels compassionate, and for a time it may even give us a sense of purpose. But hidden within this pattern is a subtle trap. Our very presence, our very reliability, can foster a dependency that prevents the other person from discovering what they are truly capable of. Consider the parent who cannot bear to see their child stumble. Out of love, they rush forward to prevent every fall, to tie every shoelace, to soften every blow. On the surface, this looks like kindness. But what happens to that child when life demands that they stand on their own 2 feet? What happens when they must face the inevitability of falling and rising again? By shielding them from every discomfort, the parent unwittingly robs them of resilience, of courage, of the quiet knowledge that they can endure hardship and still go on. The same pattern exists in friendships, relationships, even in workplaces. The friend who always solves every crisis ends up becoming the crutch that prevents others from walking on their own. The colleague who covers for every mistake denies their peers the hard but necessary lessons of accountability. When you step back, when you become unreachable, you create a void that others must fill for themselves. At first they may resent it, they may feel abandoned or betrayed, but slowly something shifts. They begin to test their own strength. They try to do for themselves what they once expected you to do. And though they may stumble, though they may falter, the act of trying builds muscles that can only grow through use. Just as the body atrophies without exercise, the soul atrophies when it never has to bear its own weight. Your absence, paradoxically, becomes the very gift that allows others to grow into their wholeness. We see this in the natural world as well. Think of the fledgling bird perched at the edge of the nest. For weeks the mother has fed it, sheltered it, and taught it what she could. But there comes a day when she withholds her constant feeding, when she nudges the fledgling closer to the edge, when she does not swoop down to catch it at the first attempt. That moment of being left to its own wings is terrifying, yet without it the bird would never learn to fly, and so it is with us. To hold someone forever is not love, it is captivity. To release them is to grant them the dignity of discovering their own wings. It takes courage to play this role, because the human heart naturally yearns to protect those it loves. There is almost a secret pleasure in being needed, in being the one everyone calls upon. It reassures us that we matter, that our existence has significance. But when our identity becomes too entangled with being the rescuer, we create a chain that binds not only others but ourselves. We become trapped in the endless cycle of pouring out, of fixing, of carrying, and in doing so, we deny others the chance to rise into their own power. To break this cycle is not easy, because it means confronting the part of ourselves that thrives on being indispensable. Think of the story of someone who is always the peacemaker in their family. They are the one who smooths every argument, who intervenes in every quarrel, who rushes in to calm the storm. For years, the family grows accustomed to leaning on this person's efforts. But what happens when that person finally steps back, when they decide to no longer be available to fix everything? At first, chaos may erupt, old wounds surface, tensions rise, but gradually the family must learn to resolve its own conflicts. They must learn to listen to one another, to compromise, to take responsibility. The peacemaker's absence, though painful, becomes the very catalyst for a deeper healing. When you allow yourself to be unreachable, you are teaching a lesson far greater than any word or advice could give. You are teaching others that they are not as fragile as they believe, that they do not need to be perpetually rescued, that within them lies a reservoir of strength waiting to be tapped. And just as importantly, you are teaching yourself that your worth is not measured by constant sacrifice, but by the authenticity of your presence when you do choose to give. This is why becoming unreachable is not an act of cruelty, but the highest form of care. It resembles the way a teacher eventually steps back and allows the student to take the test alone. If the teacher were to whisper every answer, the student would never truly learn. True care does not protect someone from every struggle. It equips them to stand in the struggle themselves. True care does not prevent suffering at all costs. It honors suffering as the crucible in which strength and wisdom are forged. Imagine for a moment the swimmer learning in the shallow end. At first, they cling desperately to the instructor's arm. The fear of sinking feels overwhelming. But if the instructor never lets go, the swimmer will never learn the natural rhythm of floating, of breathing, of trusting the water. The terrifying instant when the support is withdrawn is precisely the moment when confidence begins to grow. It is the same in life. To step back is to say, I believe in you. I trust that you can do this. And so, when you become unreachable, you are not abandoning those you love. You are not condemning them to loneliness or despair. You are inviting them into their own power. You are creating the space in which their resilience can surface, in which their courage can awaken. It may feel, in the moment, like distance. But in truth, it is a deeper form of intimacy, because you are relating to them not as someone fragile who must be endlessly saved, but as someone strong who is capable of carrying their own life. This breaking of dependency is not only a gift to others, it is a gift to yourself. For as you step back, you learn that you too are not defined by the endless demands of others. You discover that your love is not proven by how much you exhaust yourself, but by how much you empower those around you to grow. You come to see that sometimes the greatest act of love is not to give more, but to give less, so that others may discover what they already carry within. To become unreachable, then, is to trust in the hidden strength of life itself. It is to know that the soul, like the body, has a natural instinct to survive, to adapt, to grow stronger when challenged. By breaking the cycle of overdependency, you do not weaken the bond you share with others. You purify it. You transform it from a chain of need into a connection of respect. You allow them to meet you not as someone who leans endlessly, but as someone who stands beside you, whole and capable in their own right. And in this way, both of you rise. Time is the one possession no one can ever give back to you once it has been spent. Unlike money, it cannot be earned again. Unlike possessions, it cannot be stored away and retrieved later. Every passing moment is a fragment of your life, and each fragment carries a cost. Every phone call answered, every obligation accepted, every demand entertained, no matter how small, extracts something from you. For most people, this exchange is unconscious. We move from one distraction to the next, one request to another, scattering pieces of ourselves so broadly that by the day's end we are hollowed out, unable to recall where our energy has gone. To become unreachable is to awaken to this truth. It is to step back and declare that your time and your energy are sacred resources, not commodities to be spent carelessly, not rivers to be endlessly siphoned by others. It is to remember that your life belongs to you before it belongs to the world. We live in an age that glorifies accessibility. The world applauds those who respond instantly, who never turn their devices off, who answer every request with a quick yes. Yet beneath this constant accessibility lies a quiet erosion of the soul. The very boundaries that protect your vitality are worn away, leaving you stretched thin, restless, and perpetually drained. To be always available is to surrender control of your life's most precious currency. It is to hand your clock and your spirit into the hands of others, trusting them to spend it wisely, though most will not. Reclaiming time and energy is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of survival. Think of your inner life as a reservoir. If you pour without pause, soon the well runs dry, and what you give loses its quality. A tired mind cannot think clearly. A weary heart cannot love deeply. An overextended soul cannot find joy even in what it once cherished. But when you become unreachable, when you begin to guard that reservoir, something remarkable happens. The water begins to rise again, your thoughts sharpen, your emotions deepen, your presence grows more luminous. It is not that you give less, it is that what you give becomes infinitely more powerful, because it comes from a place of fullness rather than depletion. The metaphor of the phone battery illustrates this well. Imagine leaving every unnecessary application running in the background, apps you rarely use, notifications you never truly needed. The phone overheats, drains, and becomes useless when you need it most. Our spirit suffers the same fate. The endless demands of others, the constant interruptions, the obligations we accept out of guilt rather than love. They are the background apps of life. They drain you quietly until you are left without energy for what matters most. To become unreachable is to swipe them closed, to let silence cool your mind, to restore your strength for the moments that truly call for you. And here lies the paradox. By withdrawing, by saying no, by refusing to scatter yourself across countless trivialities, you do not become absent, you become more present. You are more alive in the few moments you choose, more effective in the few tasks you undertake, more genuine in the few relationships you nurture. The truth is that no one can give their best self to everything at once. Something always suffers. But when you narrow your focus, when you draw back from the unessential, the depth of your presence transforms what you do touch. A conversation with your child, instead of being rushed between notifications, becomes saturated with your full attention. An hour spent on your craft, uninterrupted, yields more fruit than days of half-hearted effort. This is the gift of reclaiming your time and energy. You no longer dilute your presence across 1,000 shallow streams. You allow it to flow as a deep river, carrying real power. We often only come to understand this after life forces us to. The body collapses under exhaustion. Relationships falter because though we were present in body, we were absent in spirit. Dreams remain unfulfilled because we gave too much of ourselves to the noise of the world and too little to the quiet call within. The lesson arrives like a stern teacher. You cannot pour endlessly without refilling. To ignore this truth is to invite emptiness, resentment, even despair. To honor it is to discover a vitality that makes life not only bearable, but luminous. Imagine an artist at work. To the outside world, the artist may seem unreachable, hidden away in a studio for hours or days. Calls go unanswered, messages remain unread. But within that space of silence, something extraordinary is taking place. The artist is not rejecting the world. They are devoting themselves fully to the act of creation. They are giving all their energy to what matters most in that moment. When the work is revealed, the world receives not fragments of attention scattered here and there, but the fruit of undivided devotion. We do not call this selfishness. We call it art. We call it mastery. Each of us, whether artist or not, requires the same kind of sanctuary if we are to produce the life that truly belongs to us. The same holds true for love. How many conversations are half-lived because our minds are elsewhere, tethered to devices, consumed by obligations waiting just beyond the door? How many moments with loved ones pass by without depth, because though our bodies were present, our souls were already answering the next demand? When you permit yourself to be unreachable, even for a time, you give the gift of undivided presence. You discover that love requires more than proximity. It requires attention, and attention is born from energy unscattered. The world will not always applaud this choice. Some will accuse you of selfishness, of neglect, of being too distant. But beneath their words often lies a discomfort with their own dependence on your constant availability. To become unreachable is to resist the illusion that your worth is measured by how much you deplete yourself. It is to affirm instead that your worth lies in the strength and clarity of what you offer when you are whole. The act of reclaiming time and energy is, at its core, an act of courage. It requires you to disappoint others, to say no when you are expected to say yes, to endure moments of guilt and misunderstanding. But slowly it reshapes your life into one that feels aligned rather than fractured. You begin to experience the richness of moments, the clarity of thought, the joy of pursuits that once lay neglected. You awaken to the truth that your life was never meant to be a constant reaction to the demands of others, but a conscious creation of what you alone can bring into existence. When you stop scattering yourself across the endless noise, when you dare to become unreachable, you find not emptiness but abundance. You find that the very energy you once thought you lacked was there all along, waiting to be gathered. You discover that by closing the door to distraction, you open the door to presence, and you realize, perhaps for the first time, that the power of your life does not come from being endlessly available, but from being deeply alive where it matters most. When you are always available, always ready to answer the call, to give your time, to extend yourself without hesitation, something subtle begins to form in the dynamics of your relationships. It becomes easy for others to slip into the comfort of your constant presence, to rely on you without even recognizing the depth of what you are offering. Familiarity, when unexamined, often dulls appreciation. People begin to assume that you will always be there, like the furniture in a room or the light that switches on with the flick of a button. And though they may not intend to take you for granted, the human heart has a way of overlooking that which is endlessly accessible. But when you step back, when you allow yourself to become unreachable, you initiate a revelation. In the silence of your absence, truth emerges. Suddenly, those who only valued your availability for what it gave them, the comfort, the convenience, the ease, find themselves exposed. They may drift away, not because you harmed them, but because the foundation of their bond with you was never rooted in genuine care. It was rooted in what you provided, not who you were. This is the painful reality that often accompanies the decision to withdraw. Some connections dissolve, revealing themselves to have been hollow all along. And yet, as painful as this can be, it is also profoundly liberating. There is a clarity that only distance can provide. Like fog lifting from a valley, the landscape of your relationships becomes visible in its true form. You begin to see with startling accuracy who was drawn to your essence, and who was drawn merely to your service. This distinction is vital for the soul, because to live surrounded by shallow attachments is to be slowly drained of your vitality. By becoming unreachable, even for a time, you clear the field, and in that clearing, something authentic can finally emerge. There is an old saying, "Absence sharpens love, presence strengthens it." To withdraw is to test the weight of this truth. When you are no longer within arm's reach, when you are no longer instantly available, the hearts that truly value you reveal themselves by the way they hold on. They do not vanish at the first sign of distance. Instead, they carry you inwardly. They reach out not out of habit, but out of genuine desire to remain connected. They do not measure your worth by what you give them, but by the essence of who you are. These are the people who do not simply need you. They value you. Think of the friend who checks on you, not because they require something, but because they simply wish to know how you are. Think of the partner who understands your silence, who does not resent your absence, but trusts that your bond is deeper than constant communication. Think of the colleague who respects your boundaries and still honors your contribution, even when you are not endlessly accessible. These are the relationships that survive the test of unreachability. They are few, but they are pure. They are the gold that remains when the dross has been burned away. The painful part of this process is the recognition of who disappears. For many, it is shocking to see how quickly certain people fade when your availability is no longer guaranteed. You might discover that individuals you once believed were close companions were only companions to your usefulness. You might see that some family members depended on you not out of love, but out of habit or expectation. At first, this realization feels like betrayal, yet over time you come to see it not as a loss, but as a blessing. It is better to live with fewer authentic bonds than to be surrounded by many that drain your spirit while giving nothing in return. Life has a way of pruning what no longer serves our growth, and becoming unreachable is one of the ways this pruning occurs. Just as a tree must shed branches that are dead or diseased to preserve its strength for the healthy ones, so must you shed attachments that were never rooted in genuine love. The process may sting, but it is an act of preservation. It is the soul's way of conserving energy for what truly matters. And yet, the beauty of this process is not only in what falls away, but in what remains. When the noise of convenience-driven connections fades, the voices of those who truly care grow clearer. You discover who is willing to walk through silence with you, who is willing to hold your presence in their heart even when your body is absent. These people are rare, but they are the ones who form the bedrock of a meaningful life. Their love is not sharpened only by presence. It is made visible in absence. They do not forget you when you are gone. They carry you as part of themselves. We see this truth echoed in countless human experiences. Think of the soldier who goes to war, or the migrant who travels far from home. The people who truly value them do not vanish with the distance. Their love grows sharper, their bond deepens, because absence has refined it. And when reunion finally comes, the presence is stronger, the connection richer. So it is with your own life. When you step back, when you create silence, those who remain are revealed to be your true companions. To confront this truth is to confront your own worth. For too long, many of us measure our value by how much we are needed, by how much we are called upon, by how frequently our presence is demanded. But these are not measures of genuine love. They are measures of utility. True worth is found in those who see you not as a resource, but as a being, not as a tool, but as a soul. To become unreachable is to give yourself the gift of seeing this distinction clearly. And once you see it, you cannot go back to the illusions of before. You can no longer confuse convenience with love or utility with care. You begin to guard your time more carefully, to choose your connections with greater discernment, to honor the relationships that truly honor you. And in doing so, you reclaim not only your energy, but your dignity. Thus, though the process may wound, it also heals. It strips away what is false and reveals what is true. It demands that you walk through moments of loneliness, but in the end, it leaves you standing with a smaller circle, one that is far more precious. In this circle, you are not valued for what you provide, but for who you are. In this circle, you are not taken for granted, but cherished. And it is here, in this refined field of genuine connection, that you finally experience the freedom of being seen, not for your availability, but for your essence. When the noise of constant interaction fades, something extraordinary stirs within you, something most people never allow themselves to experience. For much of life, we are carried along by an endless stream of conversation, expectation, and distraction. The voices of others weave themselves into our days so tightly that we can no longer discern where their influence ends and our own truth begins. To be endlessly accessible is to live in a hall of mirrors, reflecting back what others project, mistaking those reflections for our own image. Yet when you choose to step back, when you dare to become unreachable, the mirrors crack. Silence descends, and in that silence, the faint but steady sound of your own voice begins to return. Most people fear this silence, for it strips away the illusions that constant interaction sustains. It feels like emptiness, like being stranded in a vast and uncharted wilderness. Without distraction, you are confronted by yourself, your wounds, your longings, your forgotten dreams. This is why solitude often frightens us. We fear that in the quiet we will discover something unbearable. Yet the truth is the opposite. In the quiet you discover not what is unbearable, but what is essential. You rediscover the depths that life's noise has concealed. Consider the artist who retreats into the mountains, or the thinker who locks themselves away in a cabin. To the world, such actions may appear as withdrawal, as rejection of life. But look more closely. They are not running from the world. They are returning to themselves. The stillness of the mountains, the silence of the cabin, is not an escape but a homecoming. In such places, the artist's inner images are no longer drowned out by chatter. The thinker's insights are no longer interrupted by trivial demands. Dreams resurface, long buried intuitions rise to the surface, and what once seemed clouded suddenly becomes clear. This is the gift of solitude, and it is offered to anyone willing to step beyond the safety of constant noise. When you become unreachable, you create a space that is both terrifying and sacred. In that space, you encounter yourself as you are, without disguise. You see how much of your life has been lived in reaction to others, their needs, their expectations, their judgments. You recognize how often your choices were guided not by your own compass, but by the pressures of belonging, by the desire to be approved, by the fear of being left behind. And yet, in that recognition lies liberation. For once you see the degree to which you have lived as a reaction, You also see the possibility of living as an expression of your own essence. The stillness of being unreachable grants you permission to question the patterns you have accepted blindly. Why do you wake each day and rush into obligations that drain you? Why do you pursue goals that leave you unfulfilled? Why do you continue to play roles that no longer fit? Such questions do not arise in the busyness of constant connection, for the noise keeps them at bay. But in silence they arrive like old friends long neglected, knocking at the door of your awareness, asking to be acknowledged. And when you answer them, something within you begins to shift. This process is not always gentle. To awaken hidden depths within yourself often feels like breaking apart before it feels like becoming whole. You may encounter grief for the years lost to inauthentic living. You may feel anger toward those who demanded so much of you, or sorrow for the dreams you silenced to keep peace. Yet even these difficult emotions are gifts, for they reveal that your soul is alive, that it still yearns to live fully. To become unreachable is to give these voices a chance to speak, to honor them instead of drowning them in endless interaction. And slowly, a clarity emerges. What once felt muddled becomes sharp. You begin to sense the quiet compass of your own heart, pointing steadily toward the life that is truly yours. You notice how your body responds when you imagine one path versus another, how your energy rises or diminishes depending on the choices before you. In stillness, you reconnect with an ancient wisdom within the part of you that has always known what you needed, what you desired, what you were meant to become. This wisdom cannot be heard when you are endlessly accessible. It is faint, like a whisper, but in silence it becomes a guiding voice. History is filled with examples of those who embraced solitude not as rejection, but as transformation. Mystics entered deserts, philosophers retreated into forests, visionaries secluded themselves for years before returning to the world with clarity that changed it. Their journeys remind us that to step away is not to vanish, but to prepare. To descend into silence is to gather strength, to rediscover vision, to reclaim the depths that routine and distraction have concealed. When they returned, they did not return as the same people. They returned as individuals aligned with their essence, radiant with a presence that could only be born from stillness. And so it is with you. By becoming unreachable, you do not cut yourself off from life. You reconnect to it more deeply. You learn to live not as a shadow of others' expectations, but as a true expression of your own being. You begin to honor your dreams instead of discarding them. You start to heal the wounds that were buried beneath busyness. You awaken to the joy of your own company, to the richness of silence, to the boundless creativity that arises when the mind is not perpetually occupied. The modern world will resist this choice. It will tell you that solitude is loneliness, that constant availability is proof of worth, that your value lies in how quickly you respond. But within you, in the depths that awaken only when you step back, you will know otherwise. You will know that to be unreachable is to be in communion with your own soul. You will know that absence from the noise is presence with yourself. And you will know that the life lived in alignment with your inner compass is infinitely more fulfilling than a life lived in constant reaction. When the noise fades and the silence envelops you, you discover that the emptiness you once feared is not emptiness at all. It is space, space to heal, space to dream, space to become. And in that space, the hidden depths of your being awaken, reminding you that you were never lost. You were simply waiting to be found by yourself. When you choose to become unreachable, you do more than reclaim your own soul. You extend a silent invitation for others to examine their own lives. Without speaking a word, you embody a truth that our modern age desperately needs to remember. that it is possible to stand whole, rooted, and powerful without the constant nourishment of external validation. In a world that equates visibility with worth and accessibility with love, to step back is a radical act. It unsettles those around you because it reveals an alternative way of being. You show that fulfillment does not have to be borrowed from endless interactions, that strength does not require applause, and that belonging to yourself is not abandonment of others, but the deepest form of integrity. People will notice when you shift in this way. Some may be disturbed, for your absence confronts them with their own dependency on noise, on distraction, on the comfort of constant reassurance. They may resent you for choosing a path that they themselves are afraid to walk. Others, however, will feel a stirring of admiration. They will not always know how to name it, but they will sense in you a presence that is different, a calm that is rare, a vitality that does not seem scattered by the demands of the world. And in that moment you become a mirror, not because you seek to teach, but because by living authentically, you force others to confront what it means to live less than authentic lives. The paradox of becoming unreachable is that while you seem to withdraw, your influence often deepens. It is like a tree that draws its roots farther into the earth. Though hidden, the growth strengthens its trunk, its branches, and its fruit. Others may not see your inward journey, but they will feel its effects. Your words carry more weight, your silence speaks louder, your presence radiates an intensity that cannot be faked. This is why history is filled with figures who stepped away, disappeared into solitude, and returned transformed. Prophets went into deserts, sages retreated into caves, leaders withdrew before great decisions. The world might have called them absent, but in truth they were preparing, distilling, gathering themselves so that when they returned, they carried something luminous within them. Withdrawal so often precedes revelation, because revelation cannot be found in noise. Think of the artist who stops answering every demand, who slips into a season of silence. Outwardly, it may look like withdrawal, even failure. Yet beneath the surface, something profound is happening. The silence is not empty, it is gestating. The stillness is not stagnation, it is incubation. When they emerge again, their work carries a depth it could never have had if they remained endlessly available. Or consider the leader who steps back before a great decision. To the impatient, it may seem like hesitation, but in truth it is wisdom. For the leader who knows how to pause, who knows how to retreat into stillness, returns not with reaction, but with vision. By becoming unreachable, even for a season, you remind the world of something it has forgotten. That presence is sacred. When everything is available at all times, nothing retains its value. The same is true of you. If your time, your attention, your spirit can be demanded at any moment, you teach others to treat them as disposable. But when you choose to step back, when you make your presence something that must be earned, you remind others, and yourself, that your life is not a commodity. It is not something to be consumed without thought. It is your most precious possession, and it belongs first to you before it belongs to anyone else. This reminder is not just for others, it is for yourself as well. To live authentically is to resist the temptation to dissolve into the expectations of the crowd. It is to carry your own essence intact, to guard the sacred flame of your individuality. And when you guard it, you send forth a signal that it is possible to live this way. That strength does not come from being everywhere at once, but from being deeply rooted in the ground of your own being. That love does not require constant sacrifice of self, but flourishes when given freely from a whole and undivided heart. In this way, your unreachability becomes a paradoxical gift to others. by showing that you do not need to be perpetually accessible to be whole. You give others permission to explore their own depths. You become living proof that solitude is not loneliness, that silence is not emptiness, that authenticity is not selfishness. And though some may resist this lesson, others will quietly begin to follow. They too will begin to question why they live so scattered, why they fear being alone, why they barter their presence so cheaply. In you, they will see a mirror of what is possible, but such a mirror is not always easy to hold. Strength is not only admired, it is often misunderstood, even resented. To be whole is to provoke those who are not, and yet this too is part of the work. For every person who turns away, there will be another who feels the first stirring of courage within themselves. And perhaps without knowing it, you will have planted a seed in their soul, one that will grow when they are ready to step into their own season of silence, their own journey of reclamation. The world does not need more voices lost in noise. It needs more people who have walked into silence and returned carrying truth. It needs examples of lives lived from the inside out, not the outside in. And when you become unreachable, when you honor your own time and your own essence, you are quietly shaping that possibility for others. You are saying, without words, it is possible to live this way. It is possible to belong to yourself first, and yet still return to the world with love, with clarity, with presence that is truly transformative. And so, in the end, becoming unreachable is not merely about self-preservation. It is about becoming a mirror of strength for others. You are no longer swept along by the demands of constant connection. You are no longer diluted by the endless pull of external validation. Instead, you stand as yourself, whole and luminous, and in doing so, you awaken others to the possibility that they too can live this way. In your silence, they hear the echo of their own forgotten voice. In your wholeness, they recognize the shape of their own potential. And in your choice to belong first to yourself, they are reminded of the most profound truth, that the life you give to the world carries the deepest power only when it is rooted in the life you have first reclaimed for yourself. So when you become unreachable, remember this: you are not disappearing, you are not abandoning, you are not selfish, you are rediscovering, you are protecting, you are becoming whole, and in that sacred distance life reshapes itself. Others grow, your energy is restored, truth is revealed, your inner depths awaken, and you stand as a quiet beacon of strength. To be unreachable, then, is not to vanish. It is to finally arrive, fully, authentically, powerfully, within yourself.